Hi there, so my name's Paul. On this video I want to give you 12 cognitive biases in your mind that could be really holding you back from achieving your goals or significant success in life. Let's jump straight in. So the first one, confirmation bias. This is where you seek out news or information that supports your pre-existing beliefs while ignoring or dismissing information that contradicts them. It's very dangerous, this. You have this bias, we all suffer it, I'm sure, where you look for information and news that reaffirms your original bias. This is called the confirmation bias, and it can be really difficult because it may be you're wrong, but you don't go seeking information to reassure you that you're right. You need to take in all the information because you might, if it's a very specific destiny that you're going to, if you're wrong about that, then you need to know sooner rather than later. So you need to get rid of that confirmation bias. There's an anchoring bias, number 2. For example, you might focus too heavily on the first piece of information received, the anchor, when making decisions. There was a good example of this the other day. I was watching an interview with a guy who said that the court systems are really difficult because the prosecutor goes in there first. Well, let's say you're labelled as the bad guy. The prosecutor goes in there first and tells the jury all the reasons why this person is the bad guy. Then your defence has to stand up and knock down all of those ones, but the people have this anchoring bias, having said, well, the first piece of information must be true. There's no information on your mind already, so therefore that first piece of information must be the true information. So you've got to remove that, and it links also with that confirmation bias, because if that's the first time you've heard this information, so if you hear about a certain person, they're a bad person, you've got to overcome this anchoring bias because it's the first piece of information you've had. Availability heuristic, your third confirmation bias. Overestimating the likelihood of events based on their availability in your memory. For example, after seeing news reports about airplane crashes, you might overstate the risk of flying. Number 4, hindsight bias. Believing after an event has occurred that you knew it would happen all along. For instance, perhaps you were holding on to some cryptocurrency that crashed, and then you might think you knew it was coming. You didn't. That's a hindsight bias. You didn't know, because if you did know, you wouldn't have held on to it in the first place. So it's a very dangerous bias to think, well, I knew that was coming, I should have done something about it, and you're knocking yourself right. You didn't know about it. Number 5, overconfidence bias. Overestimating your abilities or the accuracy of your predictions. Again, cryptocurrency, stock market, business analysis, we have that tendency, the overconfidence bias, to think we're going to be right and overestimating our abilities and accuracies for those predictions. Number 6, your self-serving bias. Attributing positive outcomes to your own skills and efforts, but blaming negative outcomes on external factors. So when good things happen, you attribute them to yourself and the decisions you've made. When bad things happen, you say, well, that wasn't my fault, that was external factors. For instance, crediting yourself for a work project's success, but blaming market conditions if it fails. We all want to blame someone else for failures. That's very much a societal thing as well. So that's a self-serving bias. Number 7, the sunk cost fallacy. This is a big one for me. Continuing an endeavour due to the invested resources, time, money and effort, rather than evaluating the current benefits. For instance, staying in an unfulfilling job just because you've already invested years into it, or staying into a stock company where the price has collapsed by some considerable margin, but you think you've been so involved with it for so long, the sunk cost fallacy, you might even be tempted to invest more into it as well, when clearly that business is not succeeding. Number 8, a negativity bias. This is where you give more weight to negative experiences than positive ones. For instance, dwelling on a single critical comment about your work while ignoring multiple compliments. Again, you may reflect well on this one. So someone gives you a negative comment and that can really burn away at you, can be niggling away on your mind all the time, saying, well, I had this really negative comment. Whereas people who may be really impressed with your workload or your abilities haven't said anything, It's that negative one that can really, if it bleeds, it leads, is what the press always used to say, because we've got this bias in our minds, in our cognitive ability, that if something's really bad, we latch onto that. If you hear good news, you don't really latch onto it. You just think, oh, that's nice. Whereas bad news, that's awful. And that's how the news media works as well, and why so much fake news gets spread these days as well. Number 9, the bandwagon effect. This is where you adopt beliefs or behaviors because many others do. For example, investing in a popular stock because everyone else is, without doing your own research. You see that as a great example. You see that happening a lot because lots of other people have invested in it. It must be good. Not just stocks, investing time and effort in things as well. Number 10, cognitive bias, halo effect. Letting a single positive trait influence your overall perception of a person. For example, assuming someone is also kind and competent because they are attractive. Dunning-kruger effect. This is where, for example, low-skilled individuals overestimate their abilities. For instance, a novice chess player thinking they are much better than they actually are. It's also this bias that if you have a little bit of information, you might think you're an expert because you just don't realize how much information there is to actually learn about something. So that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. And then finally, number 12 of the confirmation biases we have, loss aversion. This is where you prefer to avoid losses rather than acquiring equivalent gains. For instance, not selling a declining stock because you didn't want to realize a loss when it's the rational decision. I've heard so many people over the years say, it's not a loss until you sell. Utter nonsense, isn't it? If your stock has gone down, if you invested $1,000 in a stock and that stock is now worth $100, you've lost $900. You may not have realized that loss, but that is what you've lost. You put $1,000 into it. And so this is the loss aversion cognitive bias that we see so many people suffering with as well. I hope this does help you. Feel free to comment and share on this video. Share the video rather, so other people can be aware of these 12 cognitive biases that could be really holding you back. Thanks for watching.